Hi there, New Year. And maybe it's too late to say Happy New Year, but it's the first time I've said hello to you this new year. So I'm going to say it. Happy New Year. And I hope 2022 is going well for you so far. I personally have been reevaluating my New Year's in recent years because I used to sort of treat it like a lot of people, I think, of like this brand new start, but a way in which I'm going to make a list and then get to work at accomplishing these things, roll up my sleeves, get to work hard. Lately, I've been approaching it a different way, which I think is working much better for me, which is really enjoying the quiet and the peace of January, that time after the hustle and bustle of the holidays when we actually have time to reflect. So instead of getting to work on accomplishing my New Year goals, I actually just sit and reflect and set intentions and think about, what I would like to see come to fruition this year. And that doesn't mean it's going to come to fruition in January. That means, but it means what would I like to be building this year? What would I like to be creating? And I find that to be a much nicer way to start the new year, just in a place of quiet reflection. I actually enjoy the winter. I don't mind being kind of cozy and cooped up a little bit. It's an excuse not to be so busy in some ways. So I started thinking about, what I want for these chats this year, and I decided to bring a little coffee because I love coffee. I don't know if you're a coffee fan, but it's one of those things I feel like out of the vices that I've had in my life, it's the one that I really can't imagine living without. So I hope that I don't have to ever. But that said, I was thinking a little bit about, what I want for these chats this year because there have been so many things going through my mind about what's happening in the world and how people are doing. And, it seems like a lot of people are upset a lot of the time. That's what it seems like to me, at least when I go on social media. And maybe that's not an accurate assessment, but when I go into social media, people seem upset a lot. And I feel like that can't be a great way to live your life, if you're feeling so upset a lot of the time. And I don't know if that's true for you. I know personally when I go onto social media and or open mainstream media, I can be kind of triggered because A, there are a lot of upsetting things happening, and B, there are a lot of upsetting reactions. And then there is a lot of, I wouldn't call it dialogue, I would call it yelling at each other, calling each other names, which is also upsetting. So all that is to say that it seems like as a culture, there's a lot of upset. There's a lot of discontent, dissatisfaction. And that's a shame to me. And in my field, of course, I feel like I want to address that because why is everyone so upset all the time? Now, I'm not denying that there are major problems that we're facing in this world. Like that's that's almost not even, who needs to even say that, right? But I feel like I have to say it because it's not that I'm saying that we should all put our heads in the sand and try to pretend like terrible things or challenging things are not happening. They are, and they need to be addressed. Absolutely. But I feel like they may not be being addressed in the most productive ways. And maybe we might be missing some opportunities to solve some of these big problems. So that's partly what I have been wanting to look at is like, how can we actually approach our own encounters with people, whether it's on social media or offline, in a healthier way? How can we have healthier dialogues? How can we avoid things like name calling and censoring and attempting to just shut people down because they don't agree with what we do? I also think, this all of these issues, of course, take place in a context. I live in the United States of America, so the context that I'm aware of is American capitalism and the version of a democratic republic that we are living in. And you know, there's a lot about that, of course. There's huge ideological differences going on about how the republic should move forward. And we cannot ignore the way that capitalism plays into government and how it shapes our beliefs about life, our worldview, the dominant narratives that run through our lives. And so I wanted to address that too, this context of specifically capitalism and some of the messages, especially in American capitalism, that we receive, and what we do with those, and how we view ourselves as a result, and how we view others as a result, and the things that are working for us and against us in the system that we're operating under. Because a lot of the beliefs are actually working against us, and it's not necessarily the system itself. Although you can critique capitalism all you want, and there are certainly, it's not a perfect system, but a lot of it has to do with the way we buy into it, the way we are operating in this context. And that can shift without the system having to shift per se. And all of this brings me to a topic that I kind of wanted to kick off on, which is, how often are you living in joy? Or do you feel like you live from a place of joy? There's this concept of essential joy, which I want to explore, because I think that a lot of people have a misunderstanding about, and joy is a word that joy is a word that I like to use, but you could also use well-being, because, or, there are a number of words you could use. But I like joy because, joy to me is a deep connection to the goodness of life, to the wonder of existence even. And the fact that, we we have the privilege of being here now on this planet. That's kind of the joy that I try to anchor into myself. And of course I get lost too from time to time, and I get caught up in you know the problems of living on the planet. But when I'm anchored from that in that place, I know that all is well, and I know that I'm okay no matter what happens. And I think the problem that I see a lot in, at least in America, and in a context of American capitalism, is that people don't feel okay a lot of the time. And there are a number of reasons for that. But one is, I believe, there's this tendency to look for happiness in things outside of ourselves. And that could be through external validation, the whole social media culture, which is asking for validation from outside sources. And that's a very unreliable source. External validation is very unreliable, because at any moment, someone can attack you or someone can take that away from you. And so if you're looking for validation in that way, it's fragile, and you're always going to have to be trying to get more followers, or put better pictures up, and of course it's all based on something that an image that you're projecting, which is why people are so invested in their social media feeds, because they're wanting to project the life that they want to be leading, and a lot of times they're projecting something that they're not connected to emotionally. And so you have these images of perfect lives, the perfectly curated life, and then inside you're like dying. The other thing is that the other cause, I think, of people's upset or people's discontent is this a belief that I'm not going to be okay until something something changes outside of me, or maybe something changes inside of me, but I'll get to that one in a minute. The first one is until something changes outside of me, until everyone on the other side of the political spectrum agrees with me, I won't be okay. Or until this law is passed, I won't be okay. Or until this leader is elected, or until that would be those would be the political examples. But then it could be something like, well, until I make such and such amount of money, or until I get this promotion, or until I find my, significant other, or until I have a child, some common ones. I'm not going to be okay. So we're living life from a place of deprivation, or a place of lack, or a place of longing, and that's never a place of contentment. It's a place of always of discontent. If you actually believe that you can't be okay until A, B, and C happens, then you might never be okay. And so there's this endless striving for things in order to try to find peace or contentment. And there's always, and tends to be a moving goalpost too, because, well, if such and such a person gets elected, well, but he could be diselected, or someone else could be elected next time. I mean, there's always a moving goalpost. And no amount of stuff or promotions or husbands or wives or children are going to fill the hole that you feel inside of you. So these are some of the things that inform these misunderstandings, I think, is that, something outside of me is actually going to bring me happiness or contentment or joy. The only kind of joy, though, is the essential joy that I'm talking about, which exists within you all the time. I mean, it's there. It's always there, whether you are connecting to it or not. And so you may be asking me, well, hey, you may completely disagree with me. No, you're like, no, I'm not going to be okay until I meet my significant other. I do not want the life that I have. Or I can't be okay as long as this person is in office. So, fine, agree with me. I think it could be easy to believe that, because, and again, I'm not denying that things in the world need to change. I'm not denying that. But what I'm saying is that they don't have to change first in order for you to be okay. You can feel essential joy. You connect to essential joy every day. The thing about essential joy is that it never runs out. It's not finite. It's available all the time. It's a renewable resource. So if you know how to tap into it, then you don't need to rely on these other finite sources of joy, or temporary. So I'm going to leave it there for today, because I could go on and on and on about this, but I just, I'm just inviting you to consider that, and maybe ask the question. I mean, is it, if so and so never happened, would I be able to live a joyful life? Whatever that thing is, if I never made the $1 million, or if I didn't have a child, like, would I be able to live a joyful life? I think it's worth asking, because, if you start to go on that quest, then it's liable to open up a lot of interesting thought processes and lead to a lot of insights. So that's what's been on my mind this week, one of the many things. And I invite you to kind of try to connect to that essential joy this week. See how it goes. All right. Well, I will see you next time. Have a wonderful week.